Oh, okay.
Who's that kid in the upper right-hand corner?
I know.
I know. We got to put the other one that we just put up on the
All
website. You
right.
got to use that one on your profile pic.
I should.
So, Brent, how old is your photo?
Pretty new. That's one that this photo is actually being used in a Caddis eyewear advertisement right now.
That's a soft flex. I've ever heard it in my life right there.
Yeah,
It
I'll
was.
say.
It was so funny though because Milsh. That I don't know if you heard the story, right? Milsh put it on our text thread because someone on their all call dealer teamwork said like Brent's in some eyeglass ad. Milsh was like, "You're out of your mind."
And then, Jeff, yours is at least 10 years old, right?
Jeff's cat
Something like
that.
that.
Thing's 35 years old.
Catfishing.
Yeah.
Jeff's got his catfish biopic up there. He's like, "Remember me when I was 22?"
Yeah, Jeff's smiling like as somebody told him a really bad joke, but he wanted to be polite.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah.
the expression on his face. He's like, "Oh, that's funny."
He was like, "I can't smile too big because I'm going to use this forever as my profile pic."
Exactly.
I think mine is that picture of me like is I think 8 years old. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say 7 or
Yeah.
8 for sure.
Yeah, it's
That was
old.
Bill
You got some
going
big
into,
teeth for that age,
middle
though.
school.
Yeah, your teeth
Yeah.
came in pretty fast there, Bill.
Yeah, I know. Like it's genetic.
You completely skipped the buck tooth. That was nice.
I need to
I
schedule
can't smile
another
anymore.
appointment with
My-
glamour shots.
My teeth are so chipped and crooked.
So
Jeff, you're
I
not
need
going the
women in
Owen
automotive.
Mills route?
What now?
No.
No, I was all going to say we go to women in automotive so we get our headshots, our complimentary headshots.
Ah,
Yeah,
That's
man.
neat.
You know who did that? They were those the driving sales where I think it was who was it? Maybe DealerRater had that like photography booth set up. Smartest thing ever, man.
Yeah, I think it was
Everyone got their new profile shots, and then they collected all those emails. Like smart.
it was up there with the Phone Ninjas IV drip in Vegas.
Of course,
Yeah.
Jerry would have that.
Yep.
I was
You know
going to
what?
say, if anybody's going to be doing it, it's going
But
to be
someone
that
might
dude.
be a nurse plugging a needle into your arm.
A Vegas nurse. Trustworthy.
Vegas nurse.
Yeah,
Vegas nurse.
real.
Oh, well, here we are. And yes, everyone's sitting back saying, you know, we can hear you. Yes, this is true. So welcome,
Right.
everybody. We've got Brent and Bill here today to talk about what's wrong with people like me. I'm a vendor.
Yeah.
And all the stupid stuff we do and the non-innovation we do and lipstick
That's
on a
not
pig.
at all what we're going to talk about, just so you know.
Yeah, what are you going on about, Alex? Alex is like, I saw that you put that post out. It's like, what's wrong with vendors? It's like, why don't you just tee us up to get more people to not like us? Because it's hard enough for Bill and I to get people to like us in the first place. So
Right.
No, I find that hard to believe.
It's
You know
very
we can
true.
hear you.
Well, at least in
Yeah.
my case. So, but actually, I think we should kind of clear the air. I mean, honestly, we didn't want to go at vendors at all. It's funny that that's how you guys interpreted it because it's if anything, we're looking to help dealers make the most of all their existing vendors, as opposed to just jumping on the next vendor train. So if anything, like it's kind of false advertising. So if people are expecting some shit show of us bashing on vendors, they're going to be really disappointed.
Oh, I'll still say something stupid. Don't worry, everybody. So everyone who's joined, trust me, I promise you, I will say something egregious and stupid before this podcast is over. I promised Melissa Green that I would. So,
Well, you guys talk to a lot of dealerships. Just thinking about
sure.
something as simple as the CRM. What's the percentage of usage that you think a dealership uses with their different services, vendors, and software programs?
Well, I'll touch on that one because this actually goes back to something that back from my Next Up days with working with Clint. We looked at their like the data, right? So I'll double it back. So Clint, like they always had this really cool piece of data about how much time a salesperson was in front of a customer, right? Like the live time in front, and that's drastically changed now because of the pandemic and everything else. But we did a session way back called "How Sick Is Your Sales Floor," where we blind live in session. We did blind surveying, right, of the GMs and the dealers that were in the room, and we asked them that question. And most people in the room, anonymously admitted to that, maybe they were getting kind of 20% usage out of what they were doing with their CRM, or like less than 20 minutes a day actually in the system, like their staff. So when you anonymously talk to the dealers and they knew they weren't going to be, the spotlight wasn't going to be on them, the honesty was really startling. So, I probably still today, like I'm not going to say that it's changed, but maybe now with, I don't know, Bill, you could probably talk to it a bit more with the way things have changed in store with, less walk-in traffic now or less live traffic, depending on where you are. It's probably different. I don't know, Bill. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think it, like once the major pandemic scare sort of stopped at maybe we'll say Q2 of last year when the toilet paper shortage was going on, and the 96 months of 0% ran out. Things changed dramatically then. Joe and I did a study with Cox a few years back, and I want to say I have to double check it, and you guys can look it up and fact check me, but I think we pegged it at about 20% just a couple of years ago in terms of CRM usage. It's astonishing to me though when I go into a dealership CRM and I'm in a dealership CRM at least once a day, if not more than that, where I'll see not logged in, or logged in last 2 days ago or something like that. And, I think this pandemic, call it the lifestyle, I think a lot of dealerships are living right now, I think is really counterproductive. And they're able to get away with a lot of skipping of the technology, not logging calls, not logging floor ups, things of that nature, because everybody's making more money than they ever made in their entire life. And I just feel sorry for the people who just started selling cars like in the last couple of years, because that house they bought, or that Porsche they bought, or that Rolex they bought, or whatever.
It's going to go away.
They can't afford it anymore. I guess, let's make the money while we can, I suppose. But to that end, that's part of why Brent and I started talking about this a couple of years back of coming up with a way to use the technology that sort of not replaces our technology or replaces people, but just simply allows everyone to get the most out of themselves, the most out of what they already have. And I've been consulting with dealerships for the people in the audience who don't know. I mean, I've been working with dealerships for 15 years as a consultant, 12 of which I've been with Dealer Knows, which I'm still very much a part of, and still working with dealerships every day.
Vendors are the worst.
Yeah, exactly.
This is I love that stuff's popping up because active engagement. You're right. You are the worst. No,
yeah. So, but what I was going to say though is that I think when Brent and I first started talking about this, it's sort of like we've been swimming upstream for a long time. Jeff and I talk about this a lot, where a lot of these changes. Just was talking to another industry veteran just before I got on the call. Like a lot of these things that we want to change or wanted to do or wanted to implement, we started 20 years ago, and it always stopped. And I came to this realization that I'm just sick of swimming upstream. I think it's time for all of us to stop pretending that everybody at every dealership is capable or has the desire to do all the things that they're supposed to do. And at the same time, the OEMs, the big dealer groups, the corporate entities, those things of that nature, they're forcing more and more and more upon people to do. And it's not they're bad people. It's not dumb. I don't want anybody to take that all. I'm not what I'm trying to insinuate. But just take what I said earlier. If people are making more money than they've ever made in their lifetime, how the hell can we expect them to do more or want them to do more? We can't motivate them to do more because it's just like winning the lottery right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like shooting fish in a barrel at the moment. And I, Drew was saying that both the dealer and the vendor has gotten lazy. I think we can all agree that dealer definitely has. but there are certain vendors for sure who, struggled through this. I think of the vendors that are primarily in digital advertising. So that got budgets on ads got crushed. And so those companies have been having to pivot and try and figure out, where their world is going to be, and maybe that'll be, maybe that'll change in 6 to 12 months. Advertising might come back, and
well, they all just
everything-
threw together
everything
a
is
digital
cyclical.
retailing solution.
Yeah.
well, yeah, there's
I would
only
like to
40 of
comment,
those.
If I can really quick, Drew said that everyone is trainable. And I fundamentally and wholeheartedly disagree with that statement.
No.
I think I'm going to borrow something from what
They're
Brent
not.
taught me. I'm going to give Brent some props because when he talks about the 12-step program, he's a longtime 12-stepper, good human being with helping people get through that stuff. But you have to want to change. And that's the thing is if you don't want to be trained, I can't drag you kicking and screaming to the water to make you drink. I've literally worked with thousands of people in my career. Thousands across the entire continent. Okay, people don't want to be trained. Some people even actively try to foil the training. So I don't believe that that's the case, and that's not what I'm here to say. But I do want to nip that in the bud. Okay, part of what we talk to her about is sort of a tool Brent and I discovered called hyperautomation, and I don't. By no means is it a pitch, but I want to kind of talk to the audience about that and get your guys' opinion on it, because what we've come to realize is that a lot of people, even if they are trainable and even if their dealers are investing in training, sometimes there's a skills gap. And there's a lot of great people I met over the years, just fantastic people, good human beings, huge customer bases. But man, to get them to use the CRM or to even to send an email is hard for them to do on a consistent basis.
Well, I think I think to the point about training and doing things, I think if the dealers have gotten slimmer in terms of their staffing, and again, I know that there's nuances across the continent, right, in Canada and in the U.S. Some dealerships have stayed pretty healthy in terms of staff size, but I know around the Toronto area, a lot of dealerships have really thinned out, right? And Toyota dealers and different people have said, I'll never get back to the size of staff I had before all of this sort of went down. So there's also this, fundamentally there's always going to be this hurdle of getting people to adopt software, adopt process. And it comes down to, management style and leadership style and the culture that a dealership or a dealership group builds. It's truly up to them to really make that happen. But that's always going to be a hurdle. And now there is the reason why Bill and I got looking at hyperautomation is because there's more of the small stuff now that also gets sort of kicked to the wayside because we're busy selling cars. So then when people actually have to come back and do the really mundane stuff, it can take entire days out of their schedule. And when you're dealing with a smaller staff, I think the way software and technology is going to advance itself is with what is bridging all those gaps now that there's a people shortage. And if we're kidding ourselves if we don't think there's a labor shortage, because there is, right? There's just constantly this finding, and we see it in all verticals. I was working with a mobility company outside of automotive, and all they're looking for is labor right now, right? They're looking for drivers to drive students to school. They're, up here, the Trillium Automotive Dealers Association is doing a work program with the Philippines to bring licensed mechanics into Canada because there's such a shortage, right? So there's all of these different things. They're we see it everywhere. Everything from restaurants to retail to automotive, everyone's looking for warm bodies.
And like you said, I want to take the high road. I think a lot of people do want to get better. I'm trying to say that the majority of people don't want to do better, but I also look at it from a completely different angle of just all the requirements. The requirements keep changing. I see this all the time. You want people to send videos, texts, shoot videos, all or make these 2 phone calls, 3 phone calls a day, and still handle their existing customers and greet people in the service lane and do data mining and all these things. And it just keeps to be yes and yes and in that position. And just because somebody can change the ink cartridge in the printer doesn't mean they can do all those things. And oftentimes that's what happens. And I think it's sort of like we're almost setting people up to fail, because to Brent's point, nobody can hire people. If you go to a restaurant, you go to a hospital, it doesn't matter. You're going to wait now because there's not enough people there to take care of anyone. But then we're asking those people to compound that with more and more responsibility, adding more and more to what they already have to do. And I think something's got to give. And that's what I mean about pretending. Like, we're just going to okay, well, let's just add one more thing. It'll be fixed. And no, it's just one more thing to learn. It's one more thing to teach somebody how to use and train. It's one more thing to have a manager be responsible for. And there's just isn't enough time in the day. There's not enough energy to do that.
Well, we have some hiring practices that are along the lines of holding up a mirror and saying, "Can you fog this?" Okay, you're hired. So if
you forgot the part about you'll make $75,000 your first year. You forgot that part.
Yes, that too. But in our business, we put out some very strict details about what we're looking for in a candidate, and we put it out there, and we go through an interview process, and we're very concentrated on making sure we're hiring the right people for the right seats on our bus. And I don't know that that's truly the case in a lot of dealerships, especially right now. That might be very hard to do. Granted, with all that's going on, not at the same time right this minute. What does it matter? You can just get somebody out there who can write up a worksheet, and you're going to sell a car. But this will change, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's hiring practices is where it starts in a big way.
Chris Leslie just commented about the foggy mirror test. Actually, at Chris's store, you actually have to beat him in a push-up contest, and then you get hired.
I believe that.
But that's a great point, Alex. And I think we, it's something that I know guys like us, independently of this type of stuff, we're discussing this with our associates, and we kind of understand what's going on. But I really think about the people who are newer to the industry that have came up since 2010, 2011, where every year was a record-breaking year. I don't think they have the coping mechanism to deal with this stuff. I think anybody who went through the Great Recession or the recession of 2001, some of the OGs, they get it. They've gone through this. They know how to work their way through this. But let's face it, those gals are getting long in the tooth. You know what I mean? So it's just
or they're on DealerRefresh,
or they're there still. But I think we want to. I think we have to figure out a way. We have to figure out a way to balance all these things, because there will be an equilibrium. It will swing back to where we'll have plenty of inventory. We'll have plenty of used car inventory. Maybe it's not the SARS of 16, 17 million a year, but probably back to 14, 15, where it kind of normalizes on the curve if you see it. And
sounds like you're being optimistic.
I am being optimistic. I think the industry will rebound. This is what I know, is that those factories, they need to operate at a certain percentage rate for them to be profitable. So the manufacturers will figure out a way to make more volume. If anybody needs any proof of that, look what happened when Chrysler and GM went bankrupt in the mid-2000s. And now what are they doing? You can borrow 130, 140% of cap. It's the same effing thing that happened back 12, 14 years ago, but they're still doing the same pattern because they need to move those volumes.
By the way, while you're talking about factories having to build vehicles, they obviously have shareholders and people who have expectations of them.
Absolutely.
I'm going to try and turn this into a segue somehow, but they're fully automated. So, Jim is asking us to what dealerships can do to automate certain things and maybe get around some of the people problems that are occurring.
Jimmy the Greek. Thanks, man. That's a good segue. So I'll use an example I think that most of the audience will know. And I think Jeff and Alex will get this one, but let's look at just working the service lane. Think of how many equity mining tools came out years ago, right? And it was just going to change the world. It was going to show people how to make money. It was going to sell, 10, 15 units more a month, blah, 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 blah. But it takes somebody to operate that, right? And a lot of dealerships, at least in my experience, and I've worked with hundreds over the years, in my experience, like they don't have somebody who's dedicated to that. They don't have somebody who wants to take the mantle. And they don't even want to have somebody just print off something passively to put in the passenger seat when a car gets delivered. I mean, something that simple. But yet there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds or even thousands of dealerships that have tools like this all the time that don't get used. They're still paying for them. They could sell more cars.
Equity mining tools are paying a lot for them.
Yeah, and people aren't using them. And so that's something that we, in our partners that we've come across over the last couple of years have developed ways where we can automate a lot of these tools. And so I know I'll tee up Brent to talk about AI and go off on that diatribe. But we don't need machine learning. We don't need or predictive analytics, which a lot of this stuff is. We certainly don't need AI to do these things. We just need something to move the mouse, honestly. And so as fortuitous as it was when Brent and I were initially talking about these things and deciding to swim downstream instead of upstream, trying to change people, we came across some partners that actually have this technology that can literally move the mouse in the way a person can. And what we found is that it's extraordinary. And it is the best way to think about it is it's your favorite teammate that comes into work every day early. They're a third shift. They are good at accounting. They're good at economics. They're good at marketing. And they never quit. And they cost a fraction as much as you or anybody else works at the dealership. And so that's how we look at this hyper automation software that we've been working on the last couple of years, is essentially a way to mimic those activities. That doesn't require an API. It doesn't require, you use this tool or that tool. It's adaptive. And we feel like that's what's going to help bridge this gap so that Alex's tool that I'm sure gets ignored at a good portion of dealerships, things like that, we can look at building automations to help push that along. Now he's bragging. Okay, folks, look at that. He's like, nobody gets 100%.
No, because it's all automated.
It's all automated. That's why
people don't have to touch it.
So but one of the things that, and I'll tee Brent up to talk more about this, but one of the things in the course of working on this and talking to dealers is that they don't need a pie in the sky product. Initially when we started working on this tool and trying to adapt this technology, we were so off in the weeds in terms of some of the things we want to do. And, if anybody knows me, like I'll go way off to like the nth degree on just about anything. But we found as the dealers just wanted the simplest, most mundane things automated. Like I want my DMS to talk to my CRM properly. I want my CRM to talk to my service CRM properly. We want the tools we're using right now just to leave a note in our CRM when they're working on our behalf. Just time and time again, we're hearing these types of stories like, oh yeah, it's cool, but hey, can it do this? And the hey, can it do this is something extremely simple that would just take a matter of hours to implement.
So is that what encompasses hyper automation? Because I'm wondering how many people have heard this term, how many people have looked it up.
Well, I mean, it's definitely. I wouldn't say it's actually like a bleeding edge technology. I mean, the software that we've adapted comes out of banking actually. So it's actually a pretty mature AI. I hate to say the term, but it actually does use neural networks. It uses those things. So. We've adapted this software from other verticals, so it isn't anything really that's properly new, I would say, but it's certainly something that isn't deployed across retail automotive from what we can see. I know there's a lot of different chatbots we've seen. There's a lot of things that sort of that nature, and hey, kudos to those people. We built something like that literally took a couple weeks to understand intent. We can do all that stuff. And again, most dealerships like, that's cool, but can you get my Google Analytics to talk to my CRM? You know what I mean? Like it all boiled down to that type of stuff.
So what Drew just said there, right? The problem is you got 5,000 plus dealers opinions saying, hey, can it do this? So
18,000,
like
22,000 on the
34 with the independents.
I say there's at least I'm gonna round the number up. There's at least 1,700 dealers. Let's just cap it at that.
At least.
Just spitballing. No. So here's the thing with hyper automation's been around a long time. Bill and I've been really lucky to work with different data scientists and database senior admins and guys that are writing really smart AI. We have guys on both sides of the border that can write it and have built it. And I remember working with a friend of ours, Wessam, out of Western Canada, really bright guy writing, and he's writing a lot of AI platform stuff that they leverage it in the used car industry. They leverage it in agriculture and all this stuff. But every time to build just a simple chat bot, which let's build something for automotive. Every time we brought that in to a dealer and sat down with the dealer to pick it apart. And I think, our buddy Hicks is here on this. I think Hicks saw it at one point. But I always found it interesting that every dealer could sit down with a piece of AI and go, that's really smart. They're clearly, they can clearly see the value of it, but then there's 6 things it's not doing right off the hop that a dealer needs because of the way other software has sort of been already teed up for them. So we're trying to bring in AI as this special new, whiz-bangy thing. And, every vendor right now, going to NADA is going to be all about the AI driving their shit. But there's this learning curve that has to happen that no one's really telling anyone about, right? So when you go on and use it like an automated chatbot, still to this day, and I shared an article on our DOS page, but about the fact that there's still a learning curve that's way too long on even the most well-written chatbots. That's still not satisfying to a customer. And it sort of lets me down because I try to use them no matter what I'm doing, shopping or whatever, to see where I can get with it. And I think for us is because it's such a quick retail environment, if you're planning on, if your onus or the vendor is selling you something that's going to learn on the fly right away, I'd have to see it prove itself because I don't think it can. Because I think AI, the learning curve of the technology is just, it's far too big. And especially with the dealership, it's vast, right? Of all the different things it's got to pick up, and the nuances, like Bill said, the intent, right? The intent of every single customer is so unique. AI has got a long ass learning curve to get that done.
Right.
Let me see if I can tie all this together here. So there's
because then I want an example of how this would work at the dealership.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay. Well, I'll get into that after Alex ties it up, and I'll see.
Well, Brent, you and I are hosting.
Tie it up,
now.
Alex.
We're going to ask.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead, please. Let us know.
So Jeff Scherer
I'm so
was,
angry. I punched my computer.
Was talking about some of the tech app providers being more territorial. There was some bullet points ahead that we haven't gotten to yet about some of the bigger guys who can't even integrate within their own platforms and things like that. And I think AI also suffers from another issue here, and it all comes down to speed to market that new companies are up front or are up against. So you come out with a product, you come into the marketplace, and you're rushing. Your engineers are rushing. You're packing features in as fast as you can. And what you're typically not paying attention to is your data set. So you're not structuring the data in such a way that it's being put into the database in a way that it can be pulled out simply later. So you go on and you get successful, you pick up some dealers, and then you get bought. Right? So Cox, somebody comes along and buys you, and now they're trying to stitch this whole thing together. They don't understand exactly what you were trying to do before, and there may even be some bureaucratic political issues that also get in the way where
that's crazy talk.
Yeah, well, everyone's sort of siloed in their own world, and in order to get out of there and connect dots, it's just not happening. So if the data structure isn't there, the AI or the machine learning or whatever you're applying to do this is not going to be able to play well with it.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Alex.
Right?
Yep. Sorry, Brent, what'd you say?
Oh, I say, like to Alex's point, all that's like the AI and the machine learning on that is as they're rushed to market, things are in its infancy. So, but what we're talking about, and a great point is made is as the bigs buy up a lot of platforms, um, they're in such speed to align all these teams and all these employees and restructure and figure out how all this is going to work. And I'm not saying that, like, I don't want to talk at school about it, but my assumptions is that just keep the tech working to the best of its ability while we figure all this out. But as we all know here at the table, and probably people watching, is there's so much time restructuring and keeping the revenue running that the tech sometimes gets pushed off. As long as it's running, we're good, right? So you don't see a lot of releases, like major releases, major overhauls. That being said, part of hyper automation is taking things like, where up here in Canada, one of the experiments we did was we talked to a marketing manager where we built a hyper automation against unsubscribing customers. So up in Canada, for instance, if you have to unsubscribe people who request it, right? If there's an intent, there's implied and express consent, and one's a 90-day window and one is ongoing. But our privacy laws are so strict that if someone unsubscribes, you have to go in, you've got to take them off of all the lists. Now, if you're a dealership, and this was a Toyota dealership up here, a friend of ours, and their marketing manager said if she had a sizable list of unsubscribes, let's say even 10 to 20, not many, I think, Bill, like originally.
Yeah.
But they said to go in and poke through every platform and find the email, pull them out, but then keep it on the recall email, because you have to keep it on recall, right? So you're doing all this work. And she said it would take the better part of a day to ensure that every single record of that email in every single platform. Isn't that a new Marvel show on Disney? It is, Chris. So every single record she had to go find, and she said it would take the better part of a business day to do that. So this is what we're talking about, right? You've got people that have a lot of other things to do, and then they have to stop everything to get into all this software just to do something simple. So we wrote a piece of hyper automation where we send bots into their systems, not AI. We fucking tell these things exactly what to do. Can I swear on this?
No,
Okay.
you should. No, we'll have to erase that. Or
No, you can't
fuck, I'm really sorry about that. That's terrible.
you
All
damn
right, so anyways,
Canucks.
we went
shit.
in. So we wrote some hyper automation to do this. So where it took someone a whole day to do this, we got their unsubscribe exercise down to 7 minutes. So we built out, this is what we're talking about. It's the same exercise, but when you're writing technology to blaze through something very quickly, when you can send something through to work on its own speed, because again, we're just programming an exercise, right? So yeah, we don't, no more dashboards, Drew. So part of that exercise was it just went through for that marketing manager, unsubscribe those people in 7 minutes, and just gave her back, here's all the records we did, and we couldn't, maybe they can't find one, so it spits that back out. So the part of that is we don't want to build dashboards, we don't want to build CRMs, we don't want to build digital retailing, I don't want to build chat. I just want to build these little automations for dealerships, because again, every single dealership has a very unique problem. Like, we've talked to dealers in Arkansas, we've talked to them all across Canada and the US, and everyone's got a different thing they want to do. And that's why.
Can I address a couple points real quick? So I just want to address a couple
I'm
things.
still talking. No.
So, but I don't want to get too far.
Why are you stepping on my stuff?
Because I got to get this point.
I'm still talking.
So
no, I'm gonna make him not talk for a second. Now he'll explode.
I actually have a mute button. Who should we do?
Oh, do you? Could you just mute him for a second? Anyways, just before I throw it back to Bill. But this is why Bill and I have sort of come out to do this, and why we're sort of, and we'll talk about what we're going to do at NADA to kind of do this on the lo-fi. But we don't. In essence, we're not really building new software. We're just building workflows to make all of these things just work a little bit harder for everyone. So that, to your point, Alex, earlier about process and training and adoption, maybe we help kind of, raise all boats with that, right? That rising tide with helping just bridge gaps kind of raises staff freedom from things, but also helps dealerships not so much with revenue, because everything in software, right? Like Jeff gets pitched all day by vendors, and it's all about how much we're going to make you, right? Revenue, 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 revenue. We want to look at this from an expense standpoint, because if you look at some of the stuff we put out there, I'd rather show you how to take $250,000 and reduce it to 10, rather than show you how to make more money. You all know how to make more money. That's the easy part. But you don't know how to manage your expenses and your software expenses and your manpower expenses. So that's what we're trying to do with hyperautomation. So I'll shut up now, Bill.
Is this
please.
So I'm trying to follow. Like, you guys are not telling us what you're doing until
No.
NADA. However,
Well, here,
really,
this is the way to describe it. Did you see like both Tron movies, Alex?
yeah,
yeah.
of course. You know.
Yeah, it's nothing like either.
So it's more like Jaws 4, The Revenge, right?
It's kind of like it's kind of like Jaws 3.
So I want to address a couple of questions that popped up during Brent's explanation. And sorry I stepped on your toes, Brent.
No, it's okay.
First and foremost, with all the automations, one of the things we do is that we structure the data outside the system. So we don't worry about how it's portrayed and like that at all. We actually structure our own. So that's one of the things. When I came to the table, being the sort of data guy by reputation, I don't want to deal with any APIs and this type of stuff. So we collect and structure all the data independently of the different systems. So that way it's always a clean catch. Second thing is that I want to go back to your point earlier about what percentage do people use of their CRM or their data mining tool or their phone tool.
How do you even
whatever.
determine what that
pick
is?
the vendor you want to.
Like,
We want to maximize that percentage. So it's not a matter of, that's why I said we don't look at ourselves as another piece of technology, but more of a digital assistant. We're going to get you 50%, 60% more out of that tool that your people aren't actually using. And doing it in a way that's very, I want to say, complementary to your staff. We don't want to fire people. We don't want to fire vendors. We're completely agnostic. We just want to get the most out of those tools so people can get the full bang for their buck. And that's what Brent means by taking that $250,000 down to 10,000 or less, is that we can take a data scientist and take them from $250,000 a year, because no dealership's got a data scientist unless you're like freaking Cox or AutoNation or Lithia or someplace like that. But
Yeah.
we can take that position and reduce it down to a few $1,000s a year. That's something we can do with this tool. And so like it is that's what we call it assistant. It's a layer on top of what you do.
Alex just said something too, though, about it's Friday, so I'm a little brain dead. No, you just said and some people like what are you selling the dealers, right? Like what is it that you're creating? What are you doing? And that's the thing. We're gonna practice some reverse disruption here and not actually tell the dealers what they need. They're actually what Bill and I are doing with this exercise. So, dealer data science, did it sell more cars? Yeah, like I don't care that my technology, this hyper automations we're building, is actually going to move a piece of metal. I want it doing all the other crap that's not getting done at the dealership. But the biggest part of this is we're trying to not sit in front of a dealer and go, okay, Chris Leslie, or okay, Dave Hicks, this is our product and this is what it's going to do for you. It's what Bill and I are doing, and we could talk about this. What we're going to do at NADA is this is about the dealers telling us what they need, right? Based on this disconnect with the platforms and the disconnect with the software. Dudes, I don't know what we're building until we sit down with Jeff at Jeff's store, and Jeff goes, here's pain point number one, and here's all the things I would like to do, and then we take that and we customize that build for that dealer. So we don't have a product, because it has to be defined by a dealer. It's not defined by us. And I think that's where we kind of turn all this shit on its head, because we're not trying to force feed an agenda of digital retailing or AI or, equity mining or any of that. Like everyone's got, there's great tech out there, right? Alex has built great tech. There's other people that are probably watching this that have built great tech, and it all serves a purpose. But what we're trying to do is just ensure that by working agnostically and helping, work with Alex for Jeff's dealership, making Alex's tech talk to something better, then everyone is gaining from it, right? Alex's software still is valuable and looked valuable at the dealership. Whatever we've built for that dealership is satisfying, someone like Jeff for his efforts and his cause. And all we're doing is learning more about the small little tiny nuances, right? Because what we're doing with hyperautomation is not big sweeping things, right?
Yeah. So
what's I want to hear
like
another world
Zapier.
where.
What?
Sorry, isn't Zapier one of those technologies that connects?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually, that's a good example. And so I think a lot of people actually are saying something. I think Ryan just said something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Like what
Ryan
you guys
just-
sent
Ryan
over
just
to
hit it.
us, we didn't realize that this was the direction the show was going to go in.
So, but I want to
I don't
address
even know the direction I'm going to go in a minute.
that Ryan says. So one of the things that we found, and our CTO is actually a PhD in math and has a background in machine learning. So it's a funny joke we like to say is that a lot of times when you turn AI loose, it solves a problem that only AI can fix. Like AI discovers its own problem to solve based on what the inputs are. So what we're essentially trying to offer up is an actual solution to real problems. To Brent's point, we tried building products for dealers that are just way over their head, and so we're taking the opposite approach. So yes, if I forgot, I think it was Drew who said something like, "Is this a stop by our booth?" Yeah, stop by our booth or don't. I don't give a shit. But if you're sick of your stuff not working properly and you can't hire an infinite amount of people to do there, or who got MBAs and have started their own software companies like certain other dealerships have access to, which most don't, then we feel like there should be a solution for everyone else, the other 99%.
Well, you're going to hear more and more about hyperautomation, anyways. But I'd still like to hear another dealer example. Shut up, Brent.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear another example. Sorry. Like, what's a typical challenge that maybe a dealership runs into that hyperautomation would be able to help out with?
Is this directed towards the audience or us?
You.
Okay, cool. Because I'd love an audience question. So I'll give you a great example.
Yeah, let's use a sale floor, for instance.
I'm sorry?
Either use the sale or the parts department, for instance.
Yeah. So I mean, here's a great example of something we already built, and this goes right to, does it sell more cars? Okay. So I wrote a 4-part blog post last year about, it's really up to you to sell more cars. The technology should never sell a car. It should be the person that works at the dealership selling a car. But there is a way that we can sell more cars using this tool. So, for instance, let's take TrueCar, for example. Okay, now under non-pandemic chip shortage circumstances that we're in right now, TrueCar is one of those things where for most dealerships, they have a pretty low closing ratio if they just simply rely on the CRM. Now, mind you, I'm working between 80, 120 rooftops across North America at any given time. I can see the data, okay? Piss poor normally, less than 2%. I see when people just use the CRM to close TrueCar, but since it's such a good lead source, it delivers so many leads, and dealers love leads like they love heroin, they want that volume of leads, they'll use TrueCar. But if, and this is something after listening to TrueCar and talking to people we know inside of TrueCar, if you use the TrueCar portal to respond back to the customer so that the customer thinks they're getting a response back from American Express or Geico or something like that, the closing ratios go up dramatically. And so we've actually seen those closing ratios go from 2% to 10% measured, not by the dealer, but me going to their CRM and looking at it and comparing all the data and doing it in a way and throwing all the bad data and keeping all the good stuff in there. We can see that 10% because they're just simply going through the portal. The problem is most dealerships, for whatever reason, they don't take the time. They may not disclose the login to the actual BD agents or sales personnel who are using the tool. Maybe it's the responsibility of a manager to go in and do that on behalf of the internet sales personnel, but oftentimes it just doesn't happen. So we built an automation, took a matter of just a couple days to go in, log in, do all the stuff inside of TrueCar, go back to the CRM, actually assign the person from the CRM to the TrueCar lead, go through the whole TrueCar process. We can adjust interest rates even if we have let's say a signal based on a soft credit pull. We can even adjust that in real time and actually make a note in the CRM that it was sent through TrueCar. And we can do that automatically. So if you accept the fact that it would go from 2% to 10%, or even let's say 2% to 4%, that automation actually sells more cars. Now, do you guys understand where we're coming from?
So would the sales agent, in this case, send the message from the CRM, it would go through your technology, and then it would go into the TrueCar side and fire that message out from the TrueCar platform, all the while the sales agent's just still using one tool?
They sit back. The technology is using the dealership's technology. So it actually, on behalf of the agent, goes in, does all the agent's work, does it all natively through those apps. So everything is recorded. You get the posterity of what happened there. And all they have to do is simply do what they are responsible for inside the CRM. So if they have to send out a first manual response or something like that, they can do that inside the CRM. All the TrueCar work gets automated.
Yeah, we're trying to build like a digital assistant, really. Like they always talk about, like the big earners at dealerships always have an assistant, right? They have like a live body. And maybe that's, a luxury of having like your top people. But if you've got a small staff that have to do a lot of exercises across this software, we just want to build those connectivities in order to help that staff person just get everything they need to get done. Because, if you sit down with every single person from a lot attendant right up to the dealer principal will give you those bottlenecks with things they have to use every day. So it's just customized workflows to allow someone the assistance of something doing it quicker and more efficiently for them.
And so I do want to point something out, and it's worth, because Alex and Jeff know me, but again, some of the audience doesn't. I don't stay in the car business to get rich, okay? This isn't something where Brent and I had this idea like, hey, we want to go buy Bentleys and Ferraris like some other vendors we know. This is because, at least I can speak for me, I'm just really tired. I'm tired of working with people every single day, training the competition for that dealership when that person gets fired or quits or whatever. I love my clients. I've been blessed for the last dozen years to work at Dealer Knows, work with a lot of great dealerships over the years. But I've come to this realization that I just can't expect the same thing from everyone. Just because I could do it back when I was in retail, or just because Jeff could do it when he was in retail, or Alex could do it when he was in retail, or Jeff still is in retail. But we can't keep expecting people to do more and more and more things, especially as we can't hire them. People are leaving their jobs faster than they can be hired. And the automotive dealership is no different than the grocery store or a restaurant or a medical care facility. They're all dealing with this same personnel crunch right now. And so as they're dealing with this stuff, and as, again, I keep saying, the OEMs, Jeff can tell you some of the stuff that Mercedes is doing at his dealership. The more the OEMs keep stacking on the dealership, the more and more this crunch gets compounded. And so I would be remiss and selfish if I didn't want to help out, because nobody else is. Nobody else is doing it. Even though all the big vendors are there, they're acquiring companies left and right. I mean, we've talked about this. It's, I don't want to retrample that ground, but it's just more of the same. I've been doing this for...
Bill, you're such a kind soul.
Okay. It's killing me. So,
well, I know one of the issues we've definitely have within our landscape is, because we do have so many pieces of software to achieve, one or two different things, and getting those pieces of technology to speak to each other. Is that something where automation or hyper automation can come in? So, now you've got the CRM can talk to your DMS, can talk to your, and not just a quick, feed, but actually talk to it and be able to bring back some statistics, some data, and then maybe even be able to make a decision automatically from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to Brent's example about the unsubscribe, is that you have to go from one tool to another tool to another tool. Yeah. I mean, it could be 3-4 different tools to unsubscribe people because of that one opt-out. Now in the States, it's not something we have to worry about per se, but right to that point, Jeff, this logs in, doesn't need to remember the password. It keeps all the notes clean. It goes back and forth through all the unsubscribes and does it. And this does it in a way that it happens as fast as the screen refreshes. Brent said 7 minutes. That's based on a huge data set. For instance, we built a first responder for a dealership last year where it literally, we did a simulation of all of December 2019. So this is pre-pandemic, vehicle shortage. Big city dealership. It did all the first responses in 47 minutes. That's structuring the data. That's picking from the dealership's list of templates. It's understanding the intent. It's doing all those things. So essentially, it did a month's worth of those responses in just 47 minutes. It's insanely fast, and it uses
and part
all
of
the
I saw a couple of things that came up, and I think it was Dan that put it out about like documenting process in training, and it's true. And I commend Dan on bringing that up because selling technology into dealerships or building technologies for the OEMs, which I've been doing for 20 years. It's like I walked in 1,000 times to, a dealer principal's invited me in to talk to its managers about a piece of technology. And there's always one guy in the room that goes, well, I don't know if we need this because I have my process. And I'm like, that's killer. Why don't you go get your documentation, your documents on that process and bring it in so we can see if we can marry what we're trying to sell in or trying, your dealer principal clearly wants something. That's why I'm here. So why don't you bring your documented process? And, to Dan's, like, that's why I wanted to just point that out with Dan is, yeah, there's probably a very tiny percentage of dealerships and dealer groups that have documented process. And there you go. Process and training is hard, not discounting it. And I'm not either, but I commend the stores that actually try to document their process because I'm going to go out on a limb and say most don't. And fight me on that all day, but I can walk into half a dozen dealerships this afternoon and go, walk me through your onboarding process, walk me through your sales process, walk me through your unsubscribe process. Like I can give you a bunch of processes that no one has anything documented for because that's the automotive dealership, right?
You can do a dealer a favor and just show them what a documented process looks like. That's a I don't think many dealers have ever seen that.
Open up Google Docs and start writing out the steps. Right?
So
this is what we're talking about.
There's a joke that we say that basically like a dealership can show you like their onboarding documents, and it involves like facial piercings and how much facial hair you can have or tattoos on your neck, but it doesn't list out anything in terms of responsibilities of what you actually have to do when you're interfacing with the customer or using the technology. And we laugh about it. It's funny. And I think the audience, I think you guys are the tip of the spear, guys. I mean, you're here. You're taking time out of your own day to try to learn more from a couple bozos like Brent and I, right? But you have to remember
not that
the other thousands and thousands and thousands of dealerships who aren't. And I think so. There's a little internal bias here. And that's the thing is that Brent and I both, we've been working with dealerships for over 20 years. We've, unlike some people that are using products like this, like we've sold cars, and I think that's important to realize. And a lot of that perspective goes into why we wanted to go down this pathway is that we realize hey, I've worked with luxury dealers, I've worked with used car dealers, right? The whole gamut. It's hard to make something that works well for everyone and that everybody's actually going to want to use.
Yeah, and to that point with that, it's not about us getting rid of human capital. There's a crazy echo. It's not about us getting rid of human capital or getting rid of salespeople, but I think that the spirit of those software developers or those vendors that have tried to create platforms to allow the staff to do what they're there to do best, right? Like that's it, to be in front of a customer because, this is a people business. Everyone's in the people business in automotive. Even most of our CX is terrible. That's another episode. The fact, though, is that most dealership staff are best when they're in front of a customer helping someone out face to face, right? So the more time we give them interfacing human to human is the goal of all software. So like I said before, where we're looking at with hyperautomation is just that, is how can we build an assistant level platform that is just allowing people to have more time to do what's most beneficial to the dealership. Because if Jeff is spending all day in trying to put together a report off of platforms that takes him 9 hours, that's the dealership is not getting what they should be getting from Jeff, right? Because Jeff's stuck in a room, trying to pull shit out of software. And it's not that, and I'm not saying the software is bad. It's just like people are saying on this thread, there's lots of great software out there, but it's all owned by a lot of different companies and the integrations just aren't there. And that's not a bad thing. It's like I said, we're not here to eat anybody's lunch. We just want to connect the dots. We just want everyone to play nice. Or not.
Well, I think just the fact that you could hyper automate bringing different data points together and reports into, like, someone was saying it earlier. I think it was Drew, just another dashboard. But that would, if you could actually do that, that would really, that would speed up some processes and allow you to make an actual informed decision on what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, coincidentally, that's what we've been working on the last.
Yeah, I could see that being. I could see that being like, probably one of the first things that a dealership would ask for when it comes down to hyper automation.
We'll do it for you. That's something we've been working on for a long time, because I like to joke about the fact that not every dealership has a data scientist. Like, you can spit out as many pie charts and bar graphs and all these other things, but unless you can interpret that data, it's just numbers. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm lucky because it's something that I inherently understand, and I have people in my circle of friends who understand it better than I do. But again, we're dealing with a fraction of the population who actually gets this stuff, and it's not to bag on anybody. It's just it's the truth. Like, think of your circle of friends. Do you have an actual bona fide professional data scientist, and you're not Ryan Leslie in your circle of friends? And unless you're thinking of me, who's just an armchair data scientist, that's the reality of things. And we're just trying to help people navigate that. We want to be there. I know that I use the word help like dozens of times during this conversation, but that's what people need. And they need to understand, okay, this is the actual issue. There's not an API that exists to fix it. If you need your tools to talk to themselves, there's a way to do it.
Yeah, and if you're going to be at NADA, like vendor or dealer, like, we're going to have the most technically advanced booth in the history of NADA, probably ever. And it consists of, we've spared no expense to get 2 full whiteboards and 2 stools into our booth. And that's it. That's our whole booth, is just whiteboards and erasable markers. So that's why we're inviting dealers at NADA, because we don't know what you need, right? So we want you to come, and we want to just jam on these whiteboards at NADA and figure out what it is that where can we bridge stuff for dealers and help them, sort of make more sense. Like, Chris put something out. He goes, I don't need salespeople sending out emails all day. There's something I can do to automate that. He's in. So that's what we want. Like, I want to see Chris and get on a whiteboard with Chris and go, walk me through your pain. Like, where are the hurdles? And that's our methodology. Honestly, like, that's all we can do right now, is actually just physically and verbally ask the dealers and work with them to show us what they need, and then build it accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the advantage of us going to NADA, is like, we're not getting the inherent bias of just the tip of the spear. You know what I mean? Like, we're not getting all the stuff. Like, when you guys see technology just as much as Brent and I do, and when you try to walk through just the user interface, it's like, this was designed by a tech person, probably not even domestically, and we're expecting dealerships to understand these things. I mean, I remember the old Reynolds CRM, where you got to go between 3 different tabs to get to all the different things you need to do. It's outrageous. And we want to hear from the dealerships. We want to hear from the normal, regular dealerships who aren't in the Silicon Valley or aren't in, Manhattan, where they're the only brand of their dealership in Manhattan. We want to hear from the average dealership. We want to know what their pain points are, because we feel like there's a very simple way to do this that isn't extremely expensive, and it's something that actually frees your people up to do what they're very best at. That's what we want to do.
Well, I would definitely recommend having some examples, real world examples for dealerships, because I'm sitting there trying to think, okay, how could I integrate? How could I implement this? And
well, you can't expect us to broadcast our secret sauce over this, can you?
Well, of course, no, that.
So, but
but having some examples, on what it could achieve, how not how does it go about achieving it, but what could it achieve? I think be pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
What about real quick before we let you go, because we're coming up on the hour, but what about phone data? Are you guys able to work with, incoming phone calls? Can you automate a process around that? And then, heck, you get to a point where you could just schedule your next appointment for service, ask and know if they want a rental car, go ahead and queue up the rental car.
Absolutely. That's a good example.
Just automate all that together.
Yeah, and that's a great example of what a dealer would want, Jeff. And that's the thing is we have a natural language processing engine. Providing we can look at those transcripts is no different than reading a lead inside of the CRM, which we can already do. We can understand that intent. So that's the advantages of having mature AI is that we don't have to adapt it. We're not having to teach it. It already kind of understands this stuff. So it allows us to do things rather quickly. So to your point, if you wanted to do triggered automations based on something that pops up in a phone transcript, absolutely. We're yes. That's what we're just sort of like yes and. That's kind of one of our things to say a lot. Yes and. Anyways. So, but really, it does come down to what do you need, and chances are we can probably automate it for you, as long as the mouse moves on a screen, and we can access it remotely, whether through its active login on a machine or using a VPN, we can interface with it. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah, and we want to make sure too that folks understand that automations can apply to any department. It's not just about front of house and moving metal, right? You may need your business office, your controller may need an automation to push into something to the OEM. Like, it's not just about salespeople, and because Dan's like, well, they were going to come in and steal our process and just rewrite it. No, I don't care. I'm not trying to automate human beings, but there's a whole bunch of shit that's not being connected properly that we need to write. And it could be just a simple thing of a parts order automation, right? A certain part comes down to a certain level. The automation spins up to just automatically order that on behalf of the parts manager. Yeah. So an automation could encapsulate anything. And like we said, we want to find all the painful, laborious things and make those happen faster. I don't want to get in the way of someone working with a customer.
Yeah, one of the things, Brent brought up a good idea. Like, we can actually tie service technology to parts technology. We could actually tie a couple things. Like, I'll talk to you about offline. I don't want to get that out there, but we really see the massive gains we can get by this by actually unlocking all the data silos inside of the different departments. But I'll give you an example, because I don't really want us to be a marketing company, so I'll give you an example. But imagine like that time where you got the runaway 2001 Chevy Corvette that's $8,000 back in market that's just sucking up all your traffic. Like, we can actually in real time throttle those types of PPC instances where cars just get out of control. You need an API. We just need to be able to log into Google Analytics to see that and actually go and do that through the portal of your advertising agency in a way that it's really seamless, and it can happen automatically, where you can even set the thresholds. So, those are some examples of things we can do when we sort of unlock the different silos and just use the existing customer interfaces. So the automated reporting, like I mentioned before, that's something that immediately came to my mind, and unfortunately got spun out a little bit that for a few months, but that's one of the things we actually worked on for a long period of time, is trying to build out a much more easy, friendly version of reporting, so that you don't have to be a data scientist or spend 45 minutes of your day going from one report to another report to configuring the dates and picking this timeline, blah, 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 blah. That's stuff a machine can do for you while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think I've got an idea of what you're doing, and if you've got even a clone of Zapier, or one of the other ones that connects different techs, and you've also been able to do it in such a way where you're getting past the CRMs or the DMS's certifications and integration fees, then nicely done. I assume you're just keeping a computer open all day and it's just going through. But we are past the 2 p.m. hour, and I think we're going to let the crowd go to their next meeting or whatever it might be. Grab some lunch. It's Friday. Grab a beer, whatever you're doing. And
you need to go shovel snow.
Yep.
Yeah. I've been drinking box wine this whole time.
Thanks for letting us come in. And I'm sorry if it kind of got pitchy, but we did want to talk about the nuance between automation and AI. And we just understand it from our own experimentation and build, right? So.
We'll plug your booth real quick at NADA before we let you go.
So our booth at NADA, we've got a massive 10 by 10 luxury booth in the North Hall. We're going to be the first, and ironic, we're 674. I don't know. Look for DOS for dealers. We're going to, as soon as you walk in, we're going to be the very first booth you see. And honestly, there's going to be 2 whiteboards and 2 of us, and that's it. And a bunch of erasable markers. So that's what we're doing, is like, we're going to work in real time and just figure out what workflows make sense for the dealers, because we have a feeling that we could talk to 50 dealers at the show and it's going to be 50 different workflows and 50 different nuances. And things are going to be completely, owned by that. But we want to give that power back to the dealers, so they don't feel that we're trying to, shove that square peg in the round hole. It's like, show us where your pegs are and we'll shove stuff in them.
All right.
Now that's a good
we
spot
can leave
to
on
end.
that note.
Yep.
That's a good way to leave.
All right. See y'all
thanks
later.
everybody.
Right,
we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for having us,
got
guys. Sorry if we threw you a curveball. I apologize. I sent like 8 bullet points thinking that we would have gotten here, but we really do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing people at NADA and, like I said, helping people actually solve real business problems.
And if we can ever get Bill to stop talking, we'll
Dude, I come on like once every 2 years. That's why. I get it all out.
All right. See everyone later.
All right, gentlemen. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.